today.
Never do.
It's a real pleasure to be here. I said yesterday, this part of the world is not very familiar to me from my father growing up 25 minutes away, Timberhole in Stradbroke. And it's lovely to be amongst fellow Hopkins enthusiasts. It's not something I come across very often. And live in the wilds of West Cork, in the middle of nowhere really. When I open the curtains, I see a sea of cows and bogland, certainly not monster oak. So it's very lovely to be here. And I'd like to thank Richard for inviting me. I've heard so much about the festival from previous poets who have been here, John F. Dean last year, and Paddy Bush the year before that, I think, when they both said what a wonderful festival this is. So it's great to be here. I'm going to be saying a few words about Hopkins and T.S. Eliot, whom I had forced to research some time ago for another talk. And in doing that, I was struck by how similar they were in many ways, yet so crucially different in other ways. And I thought I'd like to investigate this more. I should say I'm not a scholar or an academic, I'm a humble poet, and so I'm really sharing an enthusiasm. So there'll be those of you here who will know much more about Hopkins and Eliot than myself, so you'll have to bite your lips and upbraid me afterwards. I want to start off this talk by an imagined scenario, imagining T.S. Eliot in 1915, American poet who had recently settled in England, and he's teaching in a school in London. And I imagine on the Friday afternoon after the last lesson, a great sigh of relief, which teachers always have on Friday afternoons. I've been a teacher myself. And Eliot walks to the window and he sees the boys moving around outside. And he turns around, and just for a second his eye glimpses initials carved onto a wooden desk. And just for a moment he looks at those initials, and the initials read GMH. For a moment he thinks, I wonder what they stand for. And he dismisses that and walks away. It's a wonderful coincidence that Eliot taught at the school Hopkins went to, Highgate School. And in 1915, Eliot wouldn't have known of Hopkins' existence, because Hopkins' poems weren't published until 1918 through the good offices of Robert Bridges. It's the closest those two men got to each other in terms of physical space, but they were so close in so many other ways. And I'm just going to say some of those ways and then go on to the differences. The first way, I suppose, was their family backgrounds. They both came from very, very similar family backgrounds. Prosperous, middle class, educated, seemingly happy. Hopkins' father was a marine insurance adjuster, i.e. well-to-do, and also wrote poetry. Mainly Hopkins was his name, he wrote poetry. Eliot's father was the president of the hydraulic press brick company in St. Louis, Missouri. And Eliot's mum wrote poetry. So straight away both young budding poets knew that their parents wrote poetry. So it was part of their family culture. Poetry was not an alien thing. It was something that your parents did. Both poets went to private schools. They both went to the best universities their countries could offer. Oxford for Hopkins and Harvard for Eliot. They both went on to teach. They were both steeped in the classics. Hopkins, as you know, became Professor of Greek at the Royal University in Dublin. Eliot was steeped in Latin and Greek. He keeps referring to Latin and Greek authors throughout his work. Now, you might say that a lot of poets in those days had that in common, i.e. Private schools, university, classics and teaching. But there are other things that Eliot and Hopkins have in common. The first thing that struck me about them was that at an earlier age, in their 20s, they both changed their lives radically. Hopkins, as we know, became a Catholic at Oxford University, which was a huge thing for him. But he went even further. He could have stayed just a Catholic, but he joined the Jesuit order, which was a radical move, even by his lights. So Eliot did the opposite thing. Whereas Hopkins was withdrawing from the world in a way, Cardinal Newman, Hopkins' great mentor, said, "We must break from the world," quote. You know, the way to God is breaking from the world. And that's what Hopkins did in his life at that stage. Eliot did the opposite. Eliot naturally was very reclusive, very scholarly, very academic, very mystical. He had a mystical experience in 1910 in Boston, when he was walking along the streets of Boston. Suddenly he kind of walked into like a time warp, as if time evaporated. And he entered what he called the Great Silence. And it was an experience he wrote about, but never published a poem of that experience. It's called Silence. So from that moment, he'd become quite a mystical figure, I think. And yet there was part of him by 1915 that felt impelled to join the world he kind of was disdainful of. So almost in a panic, he married a woman called Vivian Haywood. And the marriage was a disaster from day one, probably literally day one. Unfortunately, she had a history of mental illness which she didn't know about. And she had an affair 3 months after they got married to Bertrand Russell. And the marriage proved to be, for many years, a constant problem for him and for her. And she was a poor, poor soul. But I found it interesting that Hopkins' natural bent was towards the outside world, towards nature. You think of Hopkins as climbing trees as a boy, climbing trees as a Jesuit. I love the story of him after a rainfall in, I think it was in Roehampton. The Jesuit brother remembers Hopkins on his knees studying the glitter of sand after rain. Hopkins loved the material world. And yet there was part of him that decided to break from the world and join the Jesuits. And Eliot, who's naturally geared towards fasting and praying and confession, decided to join the world's 9-to-5 jobs, which he did. He joined a bank, Lloyd's Bank. So that I find interesting, and my title, which has the word inverse in it, refers to the fact that they're kind of doing opposites to each other. The next thing which I find very striking is that they both changed their religion to something much more austere, the religion they were brought up in. Hopkins was brought up as a sort of high church Anglican. According to him, it was quite a tepid sort of religion. He went to church every week with his parents and he did pray and so on, but it was really heartfelt. At Oxford, he became really stirred by the whole idea of Roman Catholicism. Really moved him, and he became Roman Catholic. Eliot did exactly the same thing. He was brought up as a Unitarian. Unitarians basically deny the Trinity. And they put great emphasis on doing good works rather than on prayer and liturgy. You know, the badge of honour for a Unitarian would be to found a hospital rather than to pray on your knees. But Eliot wanted praying on your knees. You know, he was like Hopkins. He wanted the faith of the early church fathers. Eliot believed in original sin, heaven, hell, confession, fasting. All the traditional pillars of pre-Reformation Christianity. So both men had that strikingly in common, this need to get back to something more rigorous and ascetic in their lives. Much to the surprise, I think, of their contemporaries. Certainly, the likes of Robert Bridges were always slightly kind of, sceptical, humouring Hopkins. And Eliot's literary friends were amazed when he suddenly became a high church Anglican in 1928. Virginia Woolf, who was a friend of his, and thought he lurched horribly to the right, on some Donald Trump of English letters. It's true, that's what she thought. And so that was another thing which is very striking about them. Another thing that they shared in common was they both had breakdowns of chronic depression. Hopkins, as we know, in Dublin, when he came over here in early 1884. Until he died, really, he was really under the cosh, to put it bluntly, which is so nice coming to Monastery, which is one of the few rays of light he experienced in Ireland. To come here to the Catholic sisters and feel warmth and affection and encouragement in what he was doing. But he had a severe, basically, it felt like a protracted breakdown, really. And from it came the wonderful and terrible sights, wonderful in the sense of awful, every sense. I wake and feel the fell dark, not day. What hours, oh what black hours we have spent this night. What sights you, heart, saw, ways you went, and more must in yet longer nights delay. Very so bleak, so heartfelt. Some of the most heart-rending poems in the English language. Same for Eliot. Eliot had a breakdown in 1921. His marriage was becoming too much. He was ill, she was ill. He was spending all his money on medical bills. And in 1921 he went to his GP and said, look, I can't go on. And GP said, you're going to have to go away to a sanatorium in Switzerland. And sent him off to Switzerland. And he stayed there for a while, and then he went to Margate in Kent, on the coast. And as the terrible sonnets came out of Hopkins' depression, out of Eliot's breakdown came one of his great poems, The Wasteland, which is a sort of a great paean to the decay of Western civilization. And yet it contains his own depression as well, his own sense of barrenness. And it's not as immediate as Hopkins' terrible sonnets, but you have lines like, the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sand or water. So you can sense the feeling of infertility and barrenness in it at this stage. So that's another thing they had in common with both having these terrible moments of darkness, but producing wonderfully creative work from those moments of darkness. Those are some of the things they've had in common. I'm going to say a few words about the differences. Now, if you pick up a volume of Hopkins and you pick up a volume of Eliot, you think, wow, these guys have come from different planets. Because the language and the tone are so different. You would never go to Eliot to find out what nature was like. If you were a Martian and came down to Earth and you said to Eliot, look, what's nature like? Show me your work. You wouldn't have a clue, really. But if you went to Hopkins, you'd be amazed. He kind of recreates nature in a way that no other poet I can think of can do. He kind of, the way I look at it, he kind of dissolves nature, and then he kind of recreates it on your tongue, or in your ear, or in your brain, or in your heart. The sort of magical metamorphosis that he is able to achieve. And I was struck. I'll read you a quote from his poem about the lark. See the lark. I don't know if has anyone seen a lark ascending? Yes? Everyone?
Yeah.
Somehow, yes. No, yes and no. Anyway, I've seen it twice, certain fields in the west of England. And I was taken by surprise, as you are, because we feel suddenly. This bird was doing some vertical lift-off and warbling. And you pause and then go higher, and pause, go higher. It's an extraordinary thing, if you've never seen it before. You think, wow, what is that? And I thought, well, that must be a lark ascending, like warm willows. It's music. And I thought, well, come on, James, you're a how would you describe that? I thought, whoa, like a fountain. I thought, no, that's been done. Anyway, when I came across Hopkins' description of a lark, I thought, yes, that's it. And he says, I hear the lark ascend, his rash, fresh, rewinded, new scaling score in crisps of curl-off wild winch whirl and pour and pelt music till none's to spill nor spend. It's a beautiful recreation of the movement and the sound in the sense that nothing's left at the end. It's wonderful. Yeah. I wish I'd written that. Eliot couldn't do that. Eliot could do other things. Eliot was more abstract, more philosophical. He has his own beauty as well. I was going to quote a line, but I got it in my head. But whereas Hopkins could explain about nature, nothing is so beautiful as spring, when weeds and wheels shoot long and lovely and lush. Eliot would write about spring. April is the cruelest month, reading lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Again, it has a sort of lovely somber beauty to it, but it's a completely different tone and attitude to Hopkins. So how come, since they had so many things in common, how do they differ? Why do they differ so much in their language and their tone and their approach? Well, the way I look at it is that each man embodied one of two universal and innate impulses that we all have, which I have illustrated before by referring to the Christian mystical tradition, which is one of my sidelights, where they have two parts called the via affirmativa and the via negativa, which some of you will know all about better than me. Now, don't be put off by the Latin. The via affirmativa means the affirmative path, or the positive path. And the via negativa means the negative path. Though negative doesn't mean negative as in bad, as we shall see. And on the via affirmativa, the positive path, the basic idea is that you believe that God is immanent in the world, that God is manifest in the world, that the world, i.e. by the world I mean nature, I mean mountains, trees, human beings, and even the works of human beings, are kind of manifestations of God's glory. And that therefore you can reach God through the world. You can reach God through beauty, through flowers, through mountains, through streams, through human beings. So it's very positive or affirmative in that respect. And the classic mystic of the Via Affirmativa would be Francis of Assisi, who was very one with nature and embraced everything. He was the great embracer, Francis. He famously embraced leopards. Nothing was outside his remit. And for the best example of affirmative poet is Gerald Manning Hopkins, who again finds his way to God through the material world, which is made sacred. So the incarnation is particularly important. The word in the flesh made sacred. The material world is sacred. Now the via negativa is the other way around, as it were. That on the negative way, the basic idea is that you can't say anything about God because God is so transcendent, he's beyond words. You can't say he's good, you can't say he's this or that, because he's just beyond that. And that the way to God is not so much through the world, but beyond it, through prayer, meditation, contemplation, through, as Cardinal Newman said, breaking from the world. So that the world, although orthodoxy exists, it can be an impediment, it can be a distraction. Bernard of Clairvaux, the great Cistercian monk, railed at ornamentation in abbeys because they thought they would distract the monks from praying. So works of art become suspicious. The world itself becomes suspicious. And I think, whereas Hopkins in his work was very affirmativa, Eliot in his work was very negative. That all his work is all about leaving the world, getting beyond it, seeking the darkness away from it. And what's interesting is that, as I say, I think both paths were embodied by each person. And although Hopkins's work is very affirmativa, his life, his day-to-day life, was very negative. The Jesuit order wasn't a picnic. It was all, there was a very strict regimen: divine office, ordination, spiritual exercises, prayer, fasting, confession. So his life, his actual life, was very negative, and there's a very interesting tension between the two. And with Eliot, again, it's the same. His life was very affirmative in many ways. He became a literary editor. He'd go to dinner parties, he'd go to music hall, he'd go to theatre, he had a club. He was a very clubbable man. He famously went to a fancy dress party dressed as Dr. Crippen. Something that you could imagine Hopkins doing. So that he had there was part of Eliot that wanted to be part of the world and valued the world. And yet his work was trying to get away from it. So each man had inverse vias in them. And I think it's the tension between the two that caused some of their greatest work. I hope that's quite a tricky thing to get your head around, and I hope I've given you the guts. Coming to the last bit of the talk. The last thing they had in common, again, which I had a chance to point, was that they both had a fascination with saints and martyrs. Right from an early age, Hopkins was writing about St. Dorothea, St. Thecla, and then later on Margaret Clitheroe, and then St. Winifred. All female saints and martyrs. Eliot, from an early age, was writing about St. Sebastian, St. Narcissus, St. Thomas Becket. All men. And psychologically speaking, I haven't got my head around why Hopkins chose women and Eliot chose men, but I'll get there eventually. Eliot's, I suppose, most famous work to do with a martyr, a Christian martyr, was Murder in the Cathedral, a play he produced in the 1930s, which is about the murder of Thomas Becket in Canterbury Cathedral, assassinated by the agents of Henry II. Amazingly, it became a smash hit in London West End. I mean, can you imagine that happening now? It would probably be an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. But it's weird to think that that kind of subject matter could be a smash hit. And interestingly, Hopkins wrote a play about a martyr, St. Winifred, an unfinished play. And in fact, Lance has done a wonderful essay about St. Winifred, and it has actually put on the play. So if you want to read more about it, go online and Google Lance Pearson Winifred. Very illuminating.
I must try it myself. I didn't know it was there.
So that's my ad break.
Thank you.
For Lance. St. Winifred, to remind you, most of you know of this, Winifred was a sort of a legendary Dark Age Welsh maiden who was being wooed by Prince Caradoc, who was kind of like a baddie. And Winifred preferred to be married to Christ than to marry Caradoc. And in a fit of anger, rage, vengeance, Caradoc cuts off her head. And where her head eventually stops eroding, a spring of water springs up, and it becomes the spring of water that's, by tradition, is the basis of Holy Well, the actual holy well near St. Bino's, the Jesuit house, where Hopkins was based in the mid-1870s, and to which he'd often repair the spiritual consolation. And it's fascinating because, as Lance and Paul Mariani, the great biographer, pointed out, that Caradoc, in the unfinished play, gets the most powerful lines. By far, you'd think that Hopkins, with his interest in Thecla, Dorothea, and Margaret Clitheroe, would give the quick lines to Winifred, but no, it's Caradoc. It's an interesting thought, and I'm going to say a word about that. But for Hopkins, Winifred would have represented three figures. First of all, the Blessed Virgin Mary, identified through chastity, purity. Also, I think, Mother Nature, associated with the spring coming out of the ground, fertility, which is pure Mother Nature. Third thing is poetic inspiration. There's a long tradition of water, of spring water being associated with the muse. It goes right back to Hesiod in ancient Greece, one of the first Greek poets, Hesiod, who famously wrote a poem called the Theogony, where he says that on Mount Helicon, in the centre of Greece, there were two springs of water that gave you prophetic and poetic inspiration. And that idea of drinking the waters of inspiration go right through to the 19th century. And Keats mentions that idea in his Ode to the Nightingale. So Hopkins, as a classicist, would have known this. So three things: Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother Nature, and poetic inspiration. And it's my view that when Caradoc, this character in the play, rises up and cuts off Winifred's head, that Hopkins, in a way, was acknowledging that his muse had gone. Now, this is my own speculation, my own idea, because it seems as if he wrote that speech in late 1884, early 1885, which was in the mudstrong of his terrible sonnet period, when he was at the nadir of his physical and mental and spiritual energy, ebb. And it seems to me that there was a point when he thought the game was up, that his inspiration had gone. It's a terrible thing, and he says, I'm not sure I have the quote to hand. He says he's in a, someone might be able to help me, he's in a coffin, something with no prospect of change. And I believe that at this moment there was a part of Hopkins' character that reared up. There was part of Hopkins that he was always torn between this dreamy, poetic self that identified with nature. Nature has no boundaries or borders, it's sort of infinite. And there's another part of Hopkins that revelled in a tight, authoritarian structure. Not just with the Jesuits, but with the British Empire. He kind of idolised, in a strange way, to Ariel, since he was a poet, the British Empire. And I think it wasn't so much to do with blood and glory, but to do with structure. He liked the idea that there was a sort of a system within which he was. And I think this authoritarian, this need for something authoritarian and regimented and hierarchical in his life, suddenly reared up in the form of Caradoc, who was a prince, and said, I can't stand this teasing, tantalizing, poetic self anymore. I'm going to cut off its head. And that's what Caradoc does. That's my own view of why Caradoc has such powerful lines. And I think that is the sort of symbolic beginning of the poetic end for Hopkins. That after that, he writes about 15 poems for the rest of his life, of which some of them are occasional poems. There's one jingoistic one about what shall I do for the land that bred me. And I think there are 3 poems of top pressure poetry from him. Spoke from civil deeds, Heraclitean fire, and thou art indeed just, O Lord. So for me, that's why I think Caradoc is the most powerful lines. It rears up out of that place, which I think is such a terrible and dramatic moment in the play and in his life. Both men were spiritual pilgrims, which is why their poetry has endured and will endure. I'm just finishing now. Because I think the idea of pilgrimage, which is another interest of mine, is sort of built into the fabric of all our lives. You know, we're all born and we'll all die, and in between we're all kind of searching for something, which is basically what pilgrims do. They set off and they hopefully arrive, and in between they're trying to find the way, especially pre-sat-nav days. You know, in the old days it was a whole different thing. And pilgrimage is built into Eliot and Hopkins, into their work. At the end of Eliot's last great poem, Little Giddy, he just see if I can find this. I want to get the words right. Does anyone know Little Giddy off by heart? Yes, he says, I can't remember, I had the quote in hand, but yes, here we are. He says at the end of Little Giddy, these are the words that always make me give me goosebumps, we shall not cease from exploration. And the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. It's a wonderful thought. And Hopkins, again, at the end of his last great work, in my view, I think Eliot as well, has a wonderful piece about pilgrimage, and I'm just going to end on a positive note. So he ends the play with these words: as long as men are mortal and God merciful, so long to this sweet spot, this leafy lea, this dry dean, now no longer dry, nor dun, but moist and musical, with the uproll and the dun carol of day and night, delivering water, which keeps thy name. For not in rock risen, but in pale water, frail water, wild, rash, and reeling water, that will not wear a print, that will not stain a pen. Thy venerable record, Virgin, is recorded. Here to this holy well shall pilgrimages be, and not from purple Wales only, nor from Elmy, England, but from beyond seas, Erin, France, and Flanders, everywhere. Pilgrims, still pilgrims, more pilgrims, still more poor pilgrims. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.